Headphone highlights. We have another addition to our wireless Bluetooth truly wireless IM category. In this, the SoundPEATS Air4s. This was sent to us by SoundPEATS for this review, so thank you very much, SoundPEATS. But as always, all thoughts, opinions, and discussions are my own words. They have not paid me or incentivized me in any way to say anything else. So let's talk about these little guys. Here they are, the SoundPEATS. They're in their simple little case here. And you got your little brand right there. SoundPEATS. Woo! Great. It's a nice little case. It's got the satin feel to it. It's a contrast to the Engine 4s here, which are a very chrome kind of case. So now we have kind of a more satiny case. I think I prefer the satin, while the chrome does kind of look a bit more premium. Problem with the chrome is that it's very much a fingerprint magnet, whereas the satin is a lot less so. However, you do kind of get different kind of fingerprint problems. Like if you have any amount of, I don't want to say grease, I'm not like a super greasy guy, but if you got like anything on your fingers, any kind of skin grease, will kind of pick up on this if you're fiddling with it too much. You could probably see a little bit of smudging around here already, but it brushes off pretty easily and pretty cleanly. But it's a nice little case. It is powered by USB-C, and also I really like this like copper aesthetic, copper little accent right here on the ring of the charger. That's super cool. I wish there was more copper accents like this around the charging case, because that looks super nice. But yeah, USB-C. You pop this open, and there they are, the Air4s. The Air4s are different than the Engines in that they're a lot more of a earbud sort of design, similar to like your Apple AirPods. So they are kind of just that little teardrop shape with these little stems that kind of help with the fit and for the touch controls and all that good stuff. But there they are. Nice compact. And they fit in there very well. The case, of course, doubles as a battery bank. So that's always cool. Fits in there nice. And they are a little bit easier to get in and out of here. If you remember from the Sound Engines, it's kind of a pain in the butt to get the Sound Engines in and out of their case. But fortunately with the Air4s, it's a bit easier. You just kind of pull it like that and they pop right out. So let's get those back out here again. And you are going to see me do a lot of comparisons between the Air4s and the Engine 4s, because the Engine 4 is kind of the closest. Oh my gosh, such a pain in the butt to get these out. Come here, you. Come on. There you go. The Engine 4s are another product line of SoundPEATS, but they are kind of in direct competition with the Air4s. There are some very notable differences. One, the design of the Engine 4s, they are more of your kind of Bluetooth IM design, where they're not a Apple AirPod design. They are a different design that utilizes the little nubs here for ear comfort, whereas the Air4s do not. They're more of a one-size-fits-all sort of situation, which may or may not benefit them down the line. But yeah, so we're going to do lots of comparisons between the Engine 4s because they're pretty similar in price, and I just kind of have a lot to say about it. But yeah, there they are, the Air4s, compared to the Engine 4s. Put the Engine 4s away for now, and keep talking about these guys. Build quality is pretty good. They feel really nice. They have a nice kind of premium look to them. I still really like this copper accent. I'm a real sucker for black and copper accented together like this. Looks nice. Logo looks nice. The buds themselves look pretty nice. Look at the even have some of the copper accents right there on the grill holes. So that's cool. They do have touch controls. It's not entirely clear to me if the touch controls are like where the logo is or on the stem themselves. I think it might be on the stem, but really the whole thing responds pretty easily when I'm using the touch controls. So build-wise, they're pretty nice. I really don't have anything negative to say about the build. The fit, though, is a little problematic. For me, they don't fit particularly well. It is that, very typical AirPods sort of feel. You just kind of put them in there, and they just kind of slide in, and then these stems are what kind of hold them in place. But they don't have any sort of seal to them at all. And not necessarily does a headphone of this earbud design require a really isolating sound seal, because stuff like, again, like the AirPod Pros, they don't really have much of a seal. And I have a couple other things that are of a similar design but don't offer much of a seal. But with these, one, the kind of seal you have with this fit, the way that the earbuds fit your ear, one, has a very dramatic impact on sound performance. But two, man, they're just not very comfortable. At least for me, they are a little bit painful. They kind of don't offer really any leeway of how they sit in the ear. So I can't like really move them around very much. It's just this really, really hard plastic with no other kind of option for ear fit and ear comfort. So out of the gate, I kind of prefer the Engine 4s for that reason, because the Engine 4s, again, just use that more typical ear tip fitting, so I can swap whatever kind of tips I want in here, and I can make it a pretty comfortable fit. This is already significantly more comfortable than the Air 4s. So that's a bit of a downside, but I think that's going to be dependent on how they fit in your ear. I think that if you're the kind of person that this fits really, really well, you're going to be fine. But if you're like me, you're probably going to have a bit of a bad time. But yeah, so comfort-wise, ooh, they kind of hurt. For me, they hurt. For me, they're painful. So I can't wear them for very long. I could wear them 20, 30 minutes, and then it starts to get really fatiguing and it starts to hurt. So I can't recommend them for comfort. I do definitely, like I said, think that the Engine 4s have a much more comfortable fit, but the Engine 4s also offer way more options because of those ear nubs. Just like with the Engine 4s, the Air 4s come with an app. Here is again what that app looks like. It's the same app. The same app that came with the Engine 4s is also what you're getting here with the Air 4s. The only difference is that the Air 4s offer active noise cancellation, ANC, so you will see an additional option in the app for turning ANC on and off. To reiterate, the Engine 4s do not have ANC. They are not a active noise canceling headphone, whereas the Air 4s are advertised for being active noise canceling. That being said, I find the active noise canceling of the Air 4s to be really disappointing. They do not really do any noise canceling of any kind. I really am getting just as much room noise with the ANC on than I am with the ANC off. And again, I think that has a lot to do with the way that they fit in the ear. It's not a tight seal, so it doesn't block out ambient noise in the room. And it doesn't behave the way that the Apple AirPods do, where Apple AirPods will sample kind of the noise around you and use that to create kind of a white noise to help block stuff out. These don't really do that, or if they are doing it, they're not doing a very good job at it. Because yeah, the ANC on and off, I hardly could tell a difference in terms of it actually isolating and blocking out and canceling noise. What it did do though is improve the sound. Sound is better with ANC on than with ANC off. We'll talk a bit more about that when we actually get to sound performance. But yes, the app is the same app, so that's nice. No different app. You can have any SoundPEATS products in the SoundPEATS app, and they'll all work and behave the same way with the same EQs. So that's good. In terms of battery life, they actually do a really good job. They have about a 26-hour playtime, and of course you get a bit more time with that when you're using the case. So battery life is actually really, really nice. You can get them to last you a whole day at least. I'm able to get them to last me a couple days if I'm listening to them regularly. But again, the comfort makes me not want to listen to them all the time. So that might also play kind of a role into the longevity that these have had for me. But I mean, let's be fair here. They actually do a great job for battery life. It lasted me as long as I ever... actually have not charged these in like 2 weeks, and they're still going strong. So, I mean, that's got to tell you something. So battery life is very nice. The connection is also totally fine, totally usable. It's a I'm perfectly happy with the connection performance with the Bluetooth on these. It's just as good as it is with the Engine 4s. I'm able to walk away from my device. A good, right now I'm up here in the office space upstairs. I can go downstairs into my laundry room. I can go outside into my backyard, and the connection remains without hardly any blips or glitches or skips in my tracks or anything like that. So the connection's very good, but Ideally, you're going to be listening to these probably with your phone paired, and you're probably going to be carrying your phone with you anyway, so I'm just not really worried about the connection breaking. In terms of latency, it's fine. I don't really notice much latency with them, so if that's something that's really, really important to you, I think it's fine. If you wanted to game with these, you could. I did a little bit of gaming with them, and during that time, I really didn't notice much latency. It was pretty one-to-one with what I was gaming, so I didn't really hear any, like, pulling a trigger to shoot a gun, the gun barrel firing off, and then the sound delay. I didn't really hear much of that, so I think that the latency's fine. So now let's talk about the sound performance, because this is where things get a little unfortunate. These are hard for me to really comprehend because they are, again, kind of in direct competition of the existing Engine 4s. And compared to the Engine 4s, these are kind of disappointing in terms of sound performance. They are, again, let me reiterate this once more. The fit, how they fit in the ear, dramatically impacts how they perform with sound. If I have them really, really crammed in here and I'm literally pushing them down into my ear to the point where now I do kind of have them isolating sound, they just kind of went, I just heard a voice tell me ANC was on. If I'm cramming them in my ears to the point where it is actually isolating the sound from the room away from me, it improves the sound, but they don't naturally fit that way. Naturally, I just kind of put them in here, I squeeze them, I put them down like that. Now they're snug, but lots of sound is leaking in and lots of sound is leaking out. And as a result, these are a very tinny sounding headphone. It's not very enjoyable. You have very subtle low end. It is there and it's present. And if you were to use the bass boost EQ, which I highly recommend with these, I think any other EQ is just not going to offer you any amount of satisfying low end. You kind of need to have that bass boost activated. But with the bass boost, the bass comes up a little bit, but it's never impactful. It's never hitting sub-range territory. It's never even really hitting bass range territory. You just kind of end up with a little bit of an artificially booming mid-bass. So it's not a whole lot of bass range, and if you want to have a bunch of big thwomps, you're not going to get it with these up front. Again, cramming them into my ears helps with that, but that's not how they're naturally going to fit me, and I highly, highly doubt they naturally are going to fit you that way. So bass is not an emphasis on this. Really, neither is mid-range. Mid-range sounds like it's in a tin can. It sounds like it's very pushed far away, especially vocals. Vocals sound really far away. They sound really artificial and metallic-y, and they're really not very clear. There's very little detail you get in the Air4s. It's a very basic sort of level of detail, but everything sounds so crushed, like artificial, like sound file quality crushed, that it really is disappointing with the sound. It also, because the imaging is so poor, the image separation between you, like being able to identify where instruments are coming from and all that, and the very, very narrow soundstage you get with them, it hardly even really sounds like a stereo headphone. It kind of mostly sounds like mono sound. Not really good. I did mention that the sound is better with ANC on than with ANC off. And yeah, man, I cannot stand them with the ANC off. ANC off, it literally just sounds like I'm listening through a tin can. Way too, like, metallic-y and vocals sound robotic, like synthetic. And the treble range is just like banging pots and pans together. It's awful. So definitely recommend using ANC on. That does kind of, it's such a weird sensation. You put the ANC on, you would expect it to do that thing where it like activates that suction feel of ANC where it's blocking everything out. It doesn't do that, but it dramatically changes the sound so much that you feel this huge shift of it being just extremely tinny and sibilant to then like, oh, okay, there's a little bit of warmth and a little bit more mid-range in there. But yeah, I don't recommend it with ANC off at all. The highs are really harsh. The highs are, they can hit really, really hot. it's not a satisfying amount of sparkle. It's just really, really sharp and sibilant. Even with the ANC on, even with the bass boost on, highs are just rough. They're really harsh. They're really fatiguing. It's not a very fun experience when you listen to anything that has notable highs and very little detail in the highs. The highs are pretty mushed together, but they are still hitting really, really hot. Unfortunately, adding more volume to the headphone is not a solution. It is not a way to kind of help compromise the performance problems, because the higher volume you go, you start to introduce more and more noise and distortion in the sound. Even with my phone and not doing anything else to it, I get to more than half volume, and it's noticeable every other tick how much more noise and distortion I'm getting. When I get to that kind of 90 percentile volume, it's so crackly and noisy, and it's bad. It's pretty bad. So volume doesn't help. Now, comparing it to the Engine 4s, what the Engine 4s offer you in contrast, to be clear, I didn't give the Engine 4s a hugely glowing review. I thought that they were fine, if you remember. They were fine, and they are. They're a totally fine IAM. But compared to the Air 4s, these have so much more presence and character. These do have some low end. It's still not real low end. It's not hitting sub bass. It's not hitting real bass, but it does have a much nicer punch to it and a lot more warmth to it. The highs are a lot more controlled in the Engine 4s than they are with the A4, so you're not hitting nearly as much fatiguing sibilants or hot spots. The treble's a lot more rolled off in the Engine 4s, but it's just a lot more enjoyable, a lot less fatiguing. You also get more soundstage in the Engine 4s than you do with the Air 4s, and that's kind of interesting because the Air 4s, even with their active noise canceling, do not have a sealed sound. It's not isolating sound at all. So you almost expect it to behave a little bit more like an open back or semi-open back headphone and would give you a bit more soundstage, but it doesn't. The Engine 4s, which do offer actual sound isolation to the point where the native passive sound isolation of these with their little silicone ear tips offers you significantly more noise suppression than the active noise canceling on these. Kind of silly. But that's just how they're built, man. I don't know what to tell you. Vocals are a lot warmer, a lot clearer, and a lot more intimate in the Engine 4s than they are with the A4s. The overall sound signature is smoother, more relaxed, a bit more velvety. High end is way more controlled. There is a roll off there, but it's, again, rolling off just the top end. You get much better image separation in the Engine 4s as well. So my instruments are a lot more identifiable, and I have this bigger sense of space between me and the sound. And because the Engine 4s have a bit more soundstage than the Air 4s, taking that soundstage and that noticeable huge difference in image separation, it leads to a much more immersive experience with your listening than the Air 4s. So, ooh. To be clear, the Engine 4s do still suffer with the same problems of at higher volumes, things start to get distorted. I do think that the distortion in the Engine 4s happened later than it does with the Air 4s. The Air 4s, that distortion starts to creep in really, really quickly. Again, you start to go over like half volume, 50% volume, and it starts to build up noise and distortion. With the Engine 4s, you can go a little bit higher before you start to hear any of that. But they both do suffer from higher volumes resulting in distortion and noise. So yeah, it's not a great sound performer, and it's not a great fit, at least for me. Again, they're really wonderful, like magnificently uncomfortable for me. But that's gonna be subjective to you. Maybe your ear shape works better for this than mine. That just is how it is. But I still think it's kind of weird. I still think that it's a weird product to have in line with the Engine 4s. Same company, same brand, generally the same price tag. I think the Engine 4s are actually a little bit cheaper. If I had to pick between these two in terms of comfort, I go with the Engine 4s. If I had to pick between these two in terms of sound performance, I go with the Engine 4s. And then if I had to pick between these two in terms of noise canceling, like actually blocking out the ambient sound around me, even though this is the only one of the two that has active noise cancellation, I would still go with the Engine 4s because they are the ones that actually passively isolate the sound and block out the environment around you. So, yeah, I it's unfortunate because I do kind of like what they were trying to do with these. You know, going with that Apple AirPod shape and feel, I get it. And I think that they probably could have been pretty good, but they needed to think more carefully about how sound gets affected when you're not sealing it. Because that's what's really the biggest problem with these. Without having that sound being sealed in your ear, everything else kind of falls apart. So the Air 4s, they're in a weird place. They're in a weird place. I really would highly recommend going with the Engine 4s if you had to pick one of these two. That is what it is. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, SoundPEATS, thank you very, very much for sending these out for review. We appreciate you. We love you. I still have your little figurine up there on the shelf. That's how much you know I still love you. So give it another try, SoundPEATS. I think that you can make these work. You just got to work a bit more on the design and think a lot harder about how you can, if not isolate the sound like you would with a design that uses ear tips, then have some way to better sample the ambient sound around us to cancel that sound out and compensate in a similar way that a lot of other noise canceling earbud style IAMs do that. Because you got a good package here, right? The package here is nice. They look nice. They feel nice. They're a good quality in terms of their build. It's just that the design isn't working for producing quality sound. That's the reality of it. So work on that, SoundPEATS. I think you could do it. I think SoundPEATS can do it. So we'll give them, keep at it. Just keep at it. So there's that. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again very soon.